Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. We here at Generation Tech believe in humanity first. It's the concept that no matter what your skin color, religion, culture, or political views are, at the end of the day, we aren't all that different from one another. The minute differences that we do have are usually exploited by individuals looking to supplement their own power, or even worse, individuals seeking to harm the human race. In the greater scope of things, our petty squabbles here on Earth are quite silly, especially considering all of the external and internal threats we face as a species. Whether it's asteroids, supervolcanoes, superbacteria, Tom Cruise, and of course Harvey Weinstein in aquatic form, dolphins. Our movement is inspired by those few humans who have left the confines of our planet and experienced what psychologists call the overview effect. Seeing Earth from orbit as a small blue pearl surrounded by a thin layer of atmosphere, these small travelers experienced a cognitive shift, usually preceded by an immense emotional breakdown, upon realizing how fragile and unified our precious blue globe is, or blue disk for someone who's three-dimensionally challenged. So as you can see, our movement is not about hating things that aren't human. It's not about fighting dolphins, dismantling our robotic vacuum cleaners, or strip mining alien planets. Although these things are nice and we enjoy doing them, they aren't necessary. The end goal is to unify humanity and also elevate us as a species. And one way to elevate humanity is by educating our fellow man about the various different factions of aliens and near-human species. By better understanding our fellow aliens, we can better cooperate with them.
Welcome to Earth.
Today we're going to be looking at the Umbaran race and discuss their weaknesses and strengths as a species. We're going to separate this into three categories. First looking at their biology, then their culture, and lastly their technology. The Umbarans are a unique near-human species colloquially known as shadow people. They basically look like extremely pale humans. Some Umbarans also have bluish skin. Another difference is that they have extremely sunken eyes, which are colorless. Their eyes are extremely vulnerable to bright light and extreme changes of light, so a flashbang or other non-lethal devices would be very useful against them. And because they're quite similar to humans physically, they have similar weaknesses that humans do, which generally means lower durability, stamina, and strength compared to other alien races.
At which he won 14 gold medals.
The average Umbaran was also a lot skinnier than the average human, although this could be because of diet and culture reasons. So in order to take advantage of this weakness, we could introduce some refined sugars and trans fat products into their society, maybe open up a few McDonald's. And within a generation, obesity will rise, including all the risks that come along with it. Also, because of their smaller bone structure, the added weight will make them slower and easier to target with a blaster. Also, as we talked about before, flashbangs really work well. Also, maybe try duct taping a flashlight to your blaster. Now, if you're the kind of person who really likes to do prep work, might I recommend using a tractor beam to drag a younger, brighter star into their system, making their entire planet very bright. Now, this is probably a dickhead move, but it's exactly what the Umbarans would do to get ahead. Despite what you might have heard, Umbarans can't just disappear in thin air. They have no biological stealth enhancements. These were mainly just rumors made up by skittish soldiers who had to fight them on their home planet of Umbaran. Their homeland was located in a ghost nebula and quite dark for galactic standards. The surface was usually covered by a thick fog or mist, further decreasing visibility. The Umbarans were used to these kind of conditions and their eyes could function in very low light. They also could see in the ultraviolet spectrum. Interestingly enough, the Kaminoans who created the clone troopers were another species that could see ultraviolet light, and they designed the clone troopers' armor with a special UV paint. While it might seem invisible to the human eye or white, the Umbarans, when they fought the clones, probably could see all the intricate UV paint designs on the armor. The Umbarans could also detect heat differences with their eyes, so that meant if you had increased blood flow in your face when you were talking to one of them, they could detect that as well. This could help them determine if an individual is lying or nervous when they're talking to them. So my advice when combating an Umbaran and in life in general, always wear a helmet. This way they can't get heat signatures off your face, and better yet, no one can tell if you're actually listening to them or you're just being incredibly stoic. Also, like any horror film, don't stray away from the group when patrolling on this planet, and don't wander into dark, shadowy areas. Also, stay away from giant vegetation. The Umbaran people were organized in a strict caste system of almost 100 levels. Only the top 10 casts were actually allowed to leave their homeworld, which meant that very few outsiders ever saw an Umbaran, or even knew the planet existed. This also meant that Umbaran culture, society, and technology grew at its own pace and trajectory, giving it many strengths over the rest of the galaxy. The caste system wasn't rigid though. An Umbaran could move up or down the caste system at the expense of another Umbaran. This was usually done through assassination, blackmailing, political maneuvering, and all sorts of nefarious activity. The consequences for getting caught and failing to ascend a caste was high, and not only affected the individual who carried out the attempt, but his or her entire family. The highest caste level was known as Retai. They made up the royalty of the Umbarans and ruled the planet as a council. This extremely competitive society produced some very capable and cutthroat individuals. They made excellent combatants and even better spies and assassins. Although they were capable of speaking basic, they also had their own spoken and written language, which was relatively unknown to outsiders, adding another layer of complexity when it came to intercepting their communications on the battlefield. The extreme society of the Umbarans also meant that Umbarans never let anyone else know what they were thinking or what their emotional state was, which meant it was very hard to guess what an Umbaran was going to do next. So when encountering an Umbaran, make sure you know what rank in the caste system they are, because only the most ruthless and cunning can stay on the top. Also try to brush up on your Umbarese, because most likely they won't expect a non-Umbaran to understand what they're saying, and they might speak with each other freely in front of you. Now, the same strengths of Umbaran society also weakens them. While their technology was extremely advanced, their relative isolation meant that the technologies that were developed in the wider galaxy didn't always reach Umbara. The constant competition and backstabbing caused by the caste system sometimes limited progress and even managed to sabotage their civilization. Their inability to engage in normal social interactions meant that Umbarans had a difficult time developing meaningful friendships and alliances with other species. They were also generally viewed with suspicion by other species. Although Chancellor Palpatine famously employed an Umbaran by the name of Sly Moore in his administration, it's unknown why exactly he employed her, although it's rumored that she was force sensitive. The Galactic Empire was also known for hiring Umbarans as spies and assassins. So when encountering Umbarans, sometimes the best way to get the upper hand against them was to get them to fight each other. Maybe even offer to help them out, because there's nothing more distracting to an Umbaran than giving them the opportunity to go climb up their caste system. Contrary to popular belief, the masks that Umbaran militia soldiers wear into battle didn't help them breathe in toxic environments. Instead, it fed the wearer a special type of gas that enhanced their reflexes, endurance, and overall combat ability. Most Umbaran weapons and vehicles were more organic in design style and resemble terrifying insects, which definitely gives it a psychological warfare boost, especially to those with certain phobias. They also were usually ray shielded, which made them incredibly difficult to destroy. The ground vehicles were generally either walkers or powered by repulsor lifts due to the rough terrain and environments on the planet. First, there was the terrifying impeding assault tank, which resembled a giant centipede. It had several segments, all armed with different types of weapons, and was extremely resistant to most types of small arms fire. It's also said that the different segments on the tank held various redundant systems, again making it very hard to destroy. The Umbaran heavy mobile cannon looked more similar to a giant walking spider with a huge electromagnetic plasma cannon on top. It shares the same armament used by the Umbaran hover tank that the Republic forces first encountered when trying to establish a forward command base during their invasion. The giant plasma cannons could do a considerable amount of damage to Republic armor. The Zenith 33 Umbaran starfighter was the Umbaran's main space and air weapon. It was controlled using a relatively intuitive holographic control system that was used in most of the weapons that they employed. Its main weapon was also a plasma cannon and was one of the few weapons powerful enough to destroy the Umbaran heavy mobile cannon. The Zenith 33 also had a very unique feature. Its cockpit was completely made up of a disruptor shield, making the ship incredibly light and maneuverable. The Umbarans also used these tiny military droids, which could sneak around and stun soldiers. So Umbaran weapons were usually very unique and well designed, and they were generally more advanced than Republic technology. My advice to you is to avoid a ground war and focus on the strengths of your military and engage them from space. The biggest weakness that the Umbaran militia really has is their lack of a black space navy. Sure, their militia has terrific starfighters, but they lacked larger capital ships and usually depended on whatever government they had allied themselves with to provide support from orbit. The Umbaran's dependence on performance-enhancing drugs can also be a big handicap as well, especially if the Umbarans aren't able to fight without them. Attacking their supply depots and logistics centers could severely hamper their infantry's ability to fight. Also, while their ground vehicles are well designed for dark jungle environments on their planets, they won't necessarily be as practical on other planets with different environments. So again, avoid combat on the ground on their home planet and engage them from orbit because most likely they won't be able to defend themselves. But if you do have to wage a ground war against the Umbarans, bring in significant amounts of air support and heavy weapons in case you encounter their armor. Otherwise, your infantry will get torn into pieces. So guys, that is our Umbaran faction analysis. While this video does prepare us to fight the Umbarans, by understanding their strengths and weaknesses, it allows us to get closer to them as well and even become friends if necessary. And that's not always a bad thing because you want to keep your friends close, but your enemies even closer. So guys, let me know if you enjoyed this kind of format for videos. Maybe we'll turn it into a series. Also, let me know what other factions you would like to see us cover. Anyway, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, my name is Alan. Thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.